is called German word order subordinate clauses. Keep this reference sheet forever. In order for me to communicate with you about grammar, these are the terms that you need to be familiar with. Let's look at them. A clause. Clause is any group of words that has a subject and a verb. So that would be an example of the cat slept. The subject is cat, the action or the verb is slept. The cat slept. An independent clause is a sentence. So any group of words that has a subject and a verb that can stand alone and make perfect sense all by itself is called an independent clause or a sentence. A dependent clause, on the other hand, is any group of words that has a subject and a verb, but it can't stand alone, because if it did, it would leave the reader or the listener with unanswered questions. Yes? And then what happened? So for example, if I had my independent clause, the cat slept, and I wanted to turn it into a dependent clause, I could put a word like because or although at the beginning of it, and it would sound like this. Although the cat slept, and it leaves you saying, yes, what happened? What happened? Looks like an exciting cat story. Tell me more. So if I put we call that a subordinating conjunction. It's a word that ties a dependent clause onto an independent clause. So a subordinate clause, that's a dependent clause that begins with a subordinating conjunction, such as that, whether, if, because, when, whenever, since, while, etc. These are all subordinating conjunctions. So regarding my me out sentence, any one of these would make you feel like something else should be following it up, right? So whether the cat slept, if the cat slept, because the cat slept, when the cat slept, whenever the cat slept, and since the cat slept, and while the cat slept. All of these make that independent sentence, the cat slept, into a dependent clause. Something that needs another thought in order to be understandable. Otherwise, it just leaves you wondering. Moving on. A subordinate clause must be attached to an independent clause in order for it to make sense. And now, to the right, these are the rules of subordinating conjunctions and subordinate clauses in English that you need to know for English class. So the English rules are this. Subordinate clauses that come before the main sentence in English are set apart from that main sentence by a comma. Here's an example. Because she studied really hard for the test, comma, Tessa earned the highest score in the class. Here's another English rule. Subordinate clauses that come after the main sentence are typically not set apart from the main sentence by any punctuation at all. Here's an example. Tessa earned the highest score in the class because she studied really hard for the test. By the way, the sentence structure consisting of a dependent clause and an independent clause is referred to as a complex sentence. And in English, there are only 4 sentence structures. The first one is a simple sentence, and that would be your just one idea. That's an independent clause. You can see the representation for this is just a single smiley face. When you see my symbols, one smiley face means it's one complete thought. So here we have a smiley face. So a simple sentence is just one idea. The cat slept. One idea. A compound sentence is just when you compound things, you add things together. So it's a simple sentence plus a simple sentence. The cat slept and the house burned down. So that's 2 simple sentences. I don't know, this is what you do when you're doing the seat of your pants here. So first thought is the cat slept. Second thought is the house burned down. A complex sentence is when you have a dependent clause attached to an independent clause. So while the cat slept, the house burned down. That is, we have the dependent clause, while the cat slept. I don't know yet. That's going to be in the next version. I don't know. But the dependent clause is while the cat slept. The independent clause is the house burned down. And so that's a complex sentence. And then we also have what we call compound complex sentences because we're crazy. And what that is you have a complex sentence like while the cat slept, the house burned down. And then you add it to another independent sentence. And the firefighters arrived. Yay! I think the cat's gonna make it. Okay, turn the page. So that's a subordinate clause or sentence structure for English. Now, German is similar but different. So first of all, right up front, I've given you the charts, the word order charts, so that at any time you can refer back to these word order charts. When we're talking about complex sentences in German, or sentences that have these dependent subordinate clauses, there are two ways to do this. If you're going to have your main sentence first, you follow the chart at the top. The main sentence is first, that's your independent clause, and then the dependent clause would come second. And we'll talk about the word order in a minute, and also some of the rules. But if you have a sentence where the dependent clause comes first, that's the second chart, and then the main clause comes second, we're going to learn that the dependent clause, if it comes first, it's now sitting. The entire clause is first position. And then that really is crazy what it does to the rest of the sentence. Let's take a look at some common subordinating conjunctions in German. We have the word das, which means that. Wenn means whenever, or sometimes it means if. Als means when, but it's just a single moment of time. Ob means whether. Seit means since. Waehrend means weil. Weil means because, but we know that there's another word for because, then, that we have to look at. And obwohl means although. Here are the facts. If any time you're freaking out, go back to the facts. Number one, subordinate clauses or dependent clauses are always set apart from the main sentence by a comma, regardless if that clause comes before or after the main sentence. So in German, we always use a comma between the two clauses, every single time. So here are some examples. Ich finde es lustig, comma, dass Angst über Kätzchen hat. That says literally, word for word, I find it funny, comma, that he fear about kitties has. So in English, smooth English, we'd say, I think it's funny that he's afraid of kittens. Now, here it is where we flip the dependent and the independent clauses. Dass Angst über Kätzchen hat, comma, finde ich lustig. Now, you will notice that when we do it this way, in the first version I said, I find it funny that he's afraid of kitties. And in the second version, I just say that he's afraid of kitties, I find funny. And the word it gets dropped the second time. And here's why. S was dropped in the second version because the entire dependent clause takes first position, and that dependent clause is the fact that he's afraid of cats. That takes first position of the sentence, and so it's that whole clause is operating as the direct object of the main sentence. Pretty wild, I think. Just let that go for a minute, but understand that in the second version, where it says, dass Angst über Kätzchen hat, that's first position, and all of that boils down just to the word it. This is what I think is funny, it. And what it is the fact that he's afraid of cats. And that all represents one single position of the sentence. It's all acting as the direct object of the main sentence. Second position is the word finde, the verb. Third position is my subject, ich. Okay, number two. The second position, conjugated verb of the dependent clause, the subordinate clause, is always in last position. So let's take a look at the sentence again. Notice the place of hat. Ich finde es lustig, comma, dass Angst über Kätzchen hat. The second clause, really, if I took the word das off it, it would read hat Angst über Kätzchen. But I'm not saying that. I have to move the word hat to last position. Second version, where we flip the order, das Angst über Kätzchen hat, comma, finde ich lustig. So hat, again, is in last position of that clause. Okay, let's take a look at the next page. Third rule. And there are actually 7 million rules. I condensed it down to 4 for your viewing pleasure. Okay, number 3, third rule. When the subordinate clause is after the main sentence follows regular word order. That's very cool. Remember, the dependent clause is always set apart from the main clause with a comma. So look back at the previous paper and look at the first chart. The first chart starts with the main sentence and ends with the dependent clause. So when I look at the word order of the first clause, in first position is my subject, in second position is my conjugated verb, Then I do my time, manner, place, direct object, and any other verbs. So when I'm putting my subordinate clause, the one that's beginning with the word das or wenn or whatever, if I'm putting that in the second half of the sentence, then the first half of the sentence is not freaky or creepy at all. Okay, then it says, number 4, when the subordinate clause or the dependent clause comes before the main sentence, then it gets ugly. Here's what happens. First of all, A, the entire subordinate clause counts as the main sentence's first position element. B, the subordinate clause is set apart from the main clause by a comma. That's normal. C, and the word order of the main sentence is adjusted so that the subject of the main sentence is bounced to third position. And that's because that dependent clause is sitting in first position and your verb has to remain in second. What? Okay, now the important part about chapter 9 is the word das, D-A-S-S. Das versus das. Let's take a look at the explanation about this word das. Both of them mean that. Both of them translate to mean the word that. So that versus that. We use the same word in English, that, to do two different jobs in sentences. We use it as a pronoun, we use it as a subordinating conjunction. In English, when that is a pronoun, here's what it sounds like. A, when that is a pronoun, it can do any job that any other noun or pronoun can do, which means it does those 5 jobs we talked about at the beginning of the year. It can be the subject in a sentence like, that is silly. That is the subject. Number 2, it can be a direct object. Who gave you that? That handwritten mess there is supposed to be who gave you that. You is the subject, that is the direct object, is what's being given. Actually, who is the subject? Okay, you is the indirect object. Okay, but anyway, that is the direct object, it's the thing being given. Number 3, it can be an indirect object. I give that a thumbs up. It can be an object of a prepositional phrase. I'm upset about that. Or it can be a predicate nominative. The answer is that. The word das in German, when it means that, like a pronoun, it really only shows up as subject, direct object, and predicate nominative. The other versions, it doesn't sit as that at all. It doesn't look like the word das. So here we go. Typically, we will only see das as a pronoun used as a subject, direct object, or predicate nominative. Here are some examples. Number 1, as a subject. Das ist albern. That is silly. Das is the subject. As a direct object. Wie findest du das? How find you that? Das is a direct object. Or as a predicate nominative. Die Antwort ist das. The answer is that. Okay, fine. Now that as a subordinating conjunction, in English, letter C, that used as a subordinating conjunction attaches a subordinate clause to a main sentence. Here are some examples. Don't tell me that you're sorry. So notice, when we use the word that as a subordinating conjunction in English, we do not separate the two clauses with a comma. We just go for it. So don't tell me that you're sorry. The first clause is don't tell me, and the second clause is you're sorry. And the word connecting them is that. When we use das, D-A-S-S, as a subordinating conjunction in German, here's what happens. Das, used as a subordinating conjunction in German, attaches a subordinate clause to a main sentence. Here are some examples. Sag nicht zu mir, dass es dir leid tut. That's the same sentence. Don't tell me that you're sorry. Notice, we have a comma between the first sentence and the second clause. And notice also that normally we would say, es tut dir leid, you are sorry, but the word tut, the conjugated verb, has moved to the final last position. So notice the comma is used before das, and notice that the second position conjugated verb from the dependent clause is moved to last position. Turn over one last bit. Weil versus den. Although both of these words mean because and can be used interchangeably as far as meaning is concerned in a German sentence, weil affects the word order of the sentence and den does not. Weil follows all the rules and the patterns that we've looked at so far, meaning using weil pushes the conjugated second position verb to the end of the dependent clause. Den, on the other hand, is a zero position word. It connects the dependent clause to the independent clause, but The word order that follows it is completely unaffected by its use. The clause following den begins with the standard first, second, third position words as normal, as if it weren't there at all. Here are some examples. All three of these sentences mean the same thing. He's happy because he likes pizza. Second version. Ist glücklich, weil Pizza gern hat. He is happy because he pizza gladly has. And here's the third example. Ist glücklich, denn hat Pizza gern. He is happy, because he has pizza gladly. Okay.
I'd be happy.